Tonight, let this Bible story bring you into a place of quiet and rest as your breathing slows and your body becomes still, allowing the noise of the day to fade without effort. The Bible tells us a story of Jonah, a man to whom the word of the Lord came, saying that he should arise and go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it. For their actions had risen up and were known before God. The word was given clearly, without confusion, and it carried weight, steady and certain, as it came to him. There was no uncertainty in what he heard, no question about what was being asked. The instruction stood before him, direct and unchanging, calling him to leave where he was and go to a place far from him, a city filled with people, movement, and noise, yet distant from what was right. Jonah remained where he was as the word settled within him. The land around him was still, the air quiet, and nothing in that moment forced him to move. The sky stretched wide above, the ground firm beneath him, and the path ahead was not hidden. It was known, clearly set before him, requiring no searching, only a decision. The direction had been given, and it remained the same, not shifting, not fading, but present, waiting for him to respond. Time moved forward without interruption, and the world around him did not change. The quiet remained, the stillness held its place, and yet within him there was movement, a turning that did not show outwardly, but was real. The instruction did not disappear, and the call did not lessen. It stayed as it had been given, steady and unchanged. Not forced upon him, but not removed from him either. Nineveh stood in the distance, unseen from where he was, yet fully known in the words that had been spoken. It was described as great, filled with people whose ways had risen up before God. And the message that was to be carried, that was not hidden. It was direct, meant to be spoken clearly, meant to be delivered without change. The task was not uncertain, and the path was not hidden. Everything that was needed had already been given. Jonah stood between what had been spoken and what he would choose to do. The moment held steady, without pressure, without noise, without urgency in appearance, yet it carried weight that could not be ignored. The call remained, quiet but firm, present in a way that did not fade with time. And as the stillness continued around him, the direction set before him did not change, waiting for the step that would follow. Jonah rose and went down to Joppa, where the sea met the land and ships rested along the shore, waiting to depart toward distant places. The harbor moved at a steady pace, quiet and unhurried, with men preparing vessels and the sound of water touching wood in a slow, constant rhythm. The air carried the scent of the sea, and the horizon stretched outward, wide and open, offering paths that led far from where he had been called. Jonah walked among the ships without drawing attention, his steps measured and certain, though the direction he had chosen led away from Nineveh. He found a ship that was preparing to leave for Tarshish, a distant place across the waters, far removed from the land he had been instructed to go to. The vessel stood ready, its structure steady against the movement of the sea, its crew moving with purpose as they made their final preparations. Jonah paid the fare and stepped onto the ship, entering into its path without hesitation, joining those who were setting out across the open waters. There was no delay in his movement, no pause once he had chosen his direction. Only a quiet continuation forward. As the ship pushed away from the shore, the distance between the land and the vessel began to grow. The harbor slowly faded behind them, its shape becoming smaller until it no longer held detail. And the open sea stretched out in every direction. The water moved gently beneath the ship, carrying it forward with a steady motion that did not resist or slow. The sky remained clear, the air calm, and nothing in the surroundings showed destruction. The journey began without force, without struggle, moving quietly away from the place where the word had been given. Jonah moved within the ship, away from the edge and down into its lower part, where the space was enclosed and separate from the wide horizon above. The sounds of the sea were softened there, the movement less visible, and the world beyond reduced to distant motion. He remained there, apart from the open sky and the direction behind him, as the ship continued forward across the calm water. The choice that had been made carried him steadily along, and the distance between him and the path he had been given continued to grow without interruption. The sea remained even, the rhythm unchanged, and the vessel moved without resistance. There was no sign of disturbance, no indication that anything would shift. The calm extended across the water and through the air, holding steady as the ship traveled farther from the shore. Jonah remained within the ship, his path set, his direction fixed, as the journey continued into the open distance. The ship moved steadily across the open sea, carried by waters that remained calm and undisturbed, stretching endlessly in every direction. The surface rose and fell with a slow and even rhythm, soft and predictable, holding the vessel in a gentle motion that required no effort to follow. The sky above was clear, wide, and still, its light settling over the water without change. And the horizon remained distant and unbroken, giving no sign of interruption. There was no urgency in the movement, no force pressing against the ship, only the quiet continuation of the journey as it moved farther from the land. Time passed without measure as the sea maintained its steady pace. The sound of water touching the sides of the ship remained low and constant, never rising, never falling away, only continuing in the same quiet pattern. The wind moved lightly across the surface, not strong enough to disturb, only enough to carry the vessel forward without resistance. The men on the ship moved about their tasks without haste, their actions steady, their voices low, as the calm around them required nothing more. Jonah remained below, separated from the wide expanse above, where the movement of the sea was less visible and the sound more distant. The space around him was still, enclosed, holding a quiet that did not change. Above him, the ship continued its path across the open water, rising and falling gently, but within the lower part of the vessel, the motion was softened, reduced to a slow and steady sway that did not interrupt his rest. The calm that covered the sea extended into that space, unchanged and uninterrupted. The light of the day moved slowly across the sky, shifting without sudden change, and as it lowered, the tone of the world softened. The brightness gave way to a quieter light, and the surface of the sea reflected it evenly, holding its calm without disruption. The transition from day to evening came without resistance, the sky deepening in color as the water remained still, its movement unbroken. As night settled, the first stars appeared above, steady and distant, mirrored faintly across the surface of the sea. The air cooled, the wind remained gentle, and the ship continued forward, guided by a path that showed no sign of change. The calm extended through the darkness, holding the water, the sky, and the vessel in the same quiet state. There was no sign of what would come, no shift strong enough to be noticed, only the steady continuation of the journey as it moved further into the open distance. The rhythm of the sea did not alter, and the stillness remained complete, surrounding everything within it. The ship pressed forward, carried by waters that gave no resistance, under a sky that held its place without movement. And within that calm, nothing broke the quiet, nothing disturbed the flow, and the journey continued without interruption. The calm did not break all at once, but slowly, almost without notice, as the air began to shift across the surface of the sea. The wind, once light and steady, changed its movement, no longer even, no longer quiet, but uneven, carrying with it a weight that had not been present before. The surface of the water responded, a gentle rhythm beginning to lose its balance as small rises formed and fell without pattern. The ship adjusted beneath it, no longer gliding as before, but beginning to move with a different motion, one that did not settle into stillness. The wind increased, not suddenly, but steadily, pressing more firmly across the open water. The sea answered with movement that grew in strength, the waves lifting higher, their rhythm no longer soft or predictable, The sound that had once been low and constant began to rise, filling the space around the ship with a steady force that did not fade. The sky above darkened as the light withdrew, the horizon losing its clarity as the storm gathered its full weight. The waves struck the sides of the ship with increasing force, lifting it and lowering it without pause. The motion no longer gentle, but pressing and continuous. The vessel moved under the power of the sea, carried upward, and then dropped again. Each movement stronger than the last. The wind moved through the air with a sound that did not break, only continued, pushing against everything in its path. The calm that had covered the sea was gone, replaced by a force that filled the space completely. The men aboard the ship felt the full weight of the storm. They moved quickly, their actions no longer steady but urgent, their voices raised as they worked to keep the vessel from breaking apart. They cast their cargo into the sea, one piece after another, releasing what they carried in an attempt to lighten the ship and keep it afloat. The effort did not stop, and the storm did not ease. The waves continued to rise, the wind continued to press, and the movement of the sea did not settle. Below, Jonah remained in the lower part of the ship, where the motion was felt but not seen, where the sound reached him without the full force of what was happening above. The storm surrounded the vessel completely, the water and the wind moving together without pause. Yet he remained where he was, still and unmoving within the enclosed space. The difference between the calm that had been and the storm that now filled the sea was complete, and still the ship continued within it, held by the force that had come upon it. The storm did not pass quickly. It remained steady in its strength, covering the sea and everything upon it. The waves rose and fell without rest. The wind moved without stopping, and the ship endured each moment within it. There was no quiet left in the water, no stillness in the air, only the full presence of the storm as it continued without interruption. The storm continued without rest, the waves rising and falling with force, the wind pressing against the ship without easing. The men stood within it, their efforts steady, but unable to overcome what had come upon them. They had cast away what they carried. They had worked without stopping, yet the sea did not change. The motion of the ship remained strong and unbalanced, lifted and dropped by the weight of the water beneath it. In the midst of this, they turned again to Jonah, the one upon whom the lot had fallen, and the question that had been asked remained before them, waiting for its answer to be acted upon. Jonah stood among them, no longer apart, no longer hidden below, but present within the storm that surrounded them all. The wind moved across him. The sound of the sea filled the air, and the movement of the ship carried him with it. He spoke plainly, without resistance, saying that if they took him and cast him into the sea, the waters would become calm. His words did not change the storm in that moment, and the men did not act immediately. They turned instead to the sea once more. Rowing with effort, trying again to reach the land, but the distance did not shorten, and the waves did not lessen. The storm grew no weaker. The sea pressed harder against them. The wind did not ease, and the ship remained within the same force that had taken hold of it. The men came to a still point in their effort, no longer able to overcome what was before them, and they turned their voices upward, calling out, asking not to be held guilty for what they were about to do. The moment held steady and heavy as the storm continued around them unchanged. Then they took Jonah, lifting him from the place where he stood, and brought him to the edge of the ship. The sea moved beneath them, rising and falling, the surface broken by the force of the storm, and without further delay, they cast him into the water. His body entered the sea, and as he was released from the ship, the movement that had surrounded them began to change. The sea ceased from its raging. The waves that had risen with force began to settle. The wind that had pressed without pause fell silent, and the motion of the water returned to stillness. The surface smoothed, the sound faded, and the storm that had filled the space withdrew completely. The ship, once carried violently, now rested upon calm waters once again, held in a quiet that had returned without resistance. Jonah moved downward beneath the surface, the water closing over him as he descended into the deep. The light from above followed him for a moment, then began to fade as the depth increased. The sound of the storm did not reach him there, and the movement of the surface did not follow. The water surrounded him fully, carrying him lower, into a space where there was no disturbance, only the steady presence of the deep. Above, the sea remained calm, the ship steady, the air quiet once more. Below, Jonah continued downward, the surface now far above him, the light reduced, the space around him growing still. The storm had ended, the movement had ceased, and what remained was a quiet that held both the waters above and the depth below in the same steady silence. Jonah continued to sink beneath the surface, carried downward by the weight of the water that surrounded him, moving steadily into the deep where the light from above began to fade. The surface of the sea, once close and visible, moved farther away with each passing moment, its brightness growing dim as the depth increased. The sound of the storm no longer reached him, and even the quiet movement of the surface was gone, leaving only the steady presence of the water as it held him and drew him lower. The light above weakened slowly, not all at once, but in a gradual fading, becoming softer and less defined until it no longer reached the space where he was. The water around him grew darker, deeper in tone, and the sense of distance from the world above became complete. There was no path upward that he could follow, no movement that would return him to the surface, only the steady descent into a place where nothing disturbed the stillness. The currents of the deep moved without force, carrying him in a way that required no effort, guiding him through a space that did not change. There was no sound of wind, no motion of waves, no voices, no activity. Only the quiet that existed beneath the surface of the sea. The weight of the water pressed evenly from all sides. Not sudden, not harsh, but constant, surrounding him fully as he continued downward. Time did not move in a way that could be measured. There was no change of light to mark its passing. No movement around him to signal its flow. The stillness remained the same, uninterrupted, holding everything within it without shift or variation. The world above, with its motion and sound, was no longer present, and what remained was the deep where everything was quiet and unchanged. Jonah moved within that depth, no longer resisting, no longer striving, carried by the water into a place where there was no direction to choose, no path to follow, only the continuation of the descent. The space around him did not open or close, it simply remained, vast and still, without edge, without boundary that could be seen or reached. The quiet extended in every direction, unbroken, steady, and complete. Then, within that deep, something moved, not with force, not with sudden change, but with purpose, steady and certain as it approached. The water shifted slightly around it, not disturbed, but parted as it passed through. It came from within the same depth, from the same stillness, moving without sound, without disruption to the quiet that surrounded it. And the Lord had prepared a great fish, moving through the deep waters, guided without hesitation, reaching the place where Jonah had descended. It came near, its movement controlled and steady, and in that same quiet, it took him into its belly. The water that had surrounded him was replaced by a new stillness, enclosed and separate from the open depth, holding him within it. The descent ended there, not in destruction, but in a place that remained still, where the movement of the deep no longer carried him further. The darkness remained, the silence remained, and the quiet that had surrounded him continued without change. Now within a space prepared for him, where nothing pressed, nothing moved, and nothing broke the stillness. The stillness within the fish remained unchanged, steady, and complete until the time appointed came to its end. There was no sudden shift, no breaking of the quiet, only a gradual movement that began without force. The fish moved through the waters with the same calm that had surrounded Jonah, rising from the depths in a steady path toward the surface. The darkness that had remained constant did not resist the movement, and the silence did not break, but continued as the fish traveled upward through the water. As the fish approached the surface, the presence of light began to return, faint at first, then slowly growing as the distance from the deep increased. The waters moved gently around it, no longer pressing downward, but opening toward the space above. The motion remained slow and controlled, without urgency, without disturbance, carrying Jonah upward within the same stillness that had held him below. The fish reached the shore where the water met the land, and there, without delay, it released Jonah onto the dry ground. The transition from the enclosed stillness to the open air came without force, and the quiet that had surrounded him remained. The ground beneath him was firm, unmoving, and the air above him was clear, carrying no storm, no weight, only a calm that matched the waters now resting at the edge of the land. The sea behind him lay still, its surface smooth and undisturbed, reflecting the light of the sky as it stretched outward. The movement that had once carried him downward was no longer present, and the depth that had surrounded him was now distant. What remained was the shore, steady and quiet, holding him where he stood. The word of the Lord came to Jonah again, clear and unchanged, saying that he should arise and go to Nineveh, that great city, and speak to it the message that would be given to him. The call that had been spoken before had not been altered, and the direction remained the same. There was no difference in what was asked, no change in what was to be done, only the continuation of what had already been set before him. Jonah stood upon the land, the path now open before him once more. The distance that had once separated him from the place he was called to go remained, yet the direction had not shifted. The stillness around him held steady, the air quiet, the ground firm, and the sea at rest behind him. The moment did not rush, and nothing pressed against him, yet the way forward was clear. And so he rose, leaving the shore behind, and began to walk toward Nineveh, the great city that had been spoken of, moving step by step across the land as the journey continued in the same calm that had followed him from the sea to the shore. Jonah continued on his way across the land, the distance before him steady and unchanged as he moved step by step toward the city that had been set before him. The path did not shift, and the ground beneath him remained firm as the journey carried him forward. The sky above held its place, the light moving slowly across it, marking the passage of time without urgency. The land stretched wide, open and quiet, until at last the city of Nineveh came into view, its walls rising in the distance, strong and unmoving. The city stood large, filled with people and movement, its gates open, its streets extending inward beyond what could be seen from the outside. Jonah approached and entered, stepping through into the space within, where the sounds of life carried through the air, steady and constant. The streets were filled with people moving about their way, each continuing in their own path, unaware of what had been spoken before his arrival. Jonah walked through the city, moving from place to place, his steps measured, his direction clear. As he went, he began to speak the message that had been given to him, saying that in 40 days the city would be overthrown. His words were not rushed, not raised in force, but spoken plainly as he continued through the streets. The message carried through the space around him, reaching those who passed by, steady and direct. The people of the city heard the words, and the movement within the streets began to change. What had been constant slowed, what had been steady shifted as the message settled among them. From one person to another, the words were carried, not with noise, not with confusion, but with a quiet understanding that spread through the city. The change did not come all at once, but it moved steadily, reaching further with each passing moment. From the least to the greatest, the people responded. They turned from what they had been doing, their actions slowing, their movement becoming still. A quiet came over the city, not forced, not sudden, but settling in a way that replaced what had been before. The king himself rose from his place, set aside what he wore, and sat in stillness, joining in what had begun throughout the city. The decree moved outward, calling for all to turn from their ways, to step away from what they had known, and to seek mercy. The city, once filled with constant motion, grew quiet, the streets no longer carrying the same sound, the same movement. The stillness spread from place to place until it rested across the city as a whole. And God saw their actions, that they had turned from their ways. And the destruction that had been spoken did not come. The city remained, its people continuing in the quiet that had taken hold. The walls stood as they had before. The streets remained in place, but what filled them had changed, not by force, not by pressure, but by the response that had come from within. The message had been spoken, and the city had heard. The movement that followed was steady, and the change that came did not pass away. Nineveh remained, held in the stillness that had come upon it, as the days continued forward without the destruction that had once been set before it. Jonah went out from the city and sat at a place to the east of it, where he could look toward Nineveh from a distance. The ground was open, the space around him wide and still. And from where he sat, the city remained visible, its walls standing firm, its presence unchanged. The air moved gently across the land, carrying no urgency, no disturbance, only a steady calm that did not press against anything. He remained there, watching, waiting, as the days continued forward without interruption. The sun rose and moved across the sky, its light steady, its warmth settling upon the land without change. There was no sudden shift, no movement that broke the quiet, only the passing of time as it moved from morning to evening, from light into a softer tone. The city remained as it was, and Jonah stayed where he had placed himself. Apart from it, yet still facing it, his attention fixed upon what lay before him. The Lord prepared a plant and caused it to grow, rising up beside Jonah to provide shade over him, covering him from the heat of the sun. The growth came without force, steady and quiet, extending until it sheltered him where he sat. Under that covering, the heat was lessened, and Jonah remained there, resting within the shade that had been given. The stillness continued, and the presence of the plant did not disturb it, but simply became part of the quiet that surrounded him. As the next day came, the Lord prepared a small creature, and it struck the plant so that it withered. The change did not come with noise, but slowly, as the plant lost its strength and no longer provided the covering it once had. The shade was gone, and the sun again rested fully upon Jonah, the warmth returning in the same steady way it had before. The air moved across the land, carrying the heat without change, and the quiet remained. Jonah stayed in that place, the city before him, the open land around him, and the sky above unchanged. The movement of the world did not press against him, and the stillness did not leave. The plant that had grown was no longer there, and the space returned to what it had been, open and uncovered. Held in the same calm that had not shifted from the beginning, the Lord spoke to Jonah, asking about the plant, about the concern that had risen within him when it had withered. The question came clearly, steady, and direct, as the others had come before. Jonah answered, and the moment held, without urgency, without force, only present as it was spoken. Then the Lord spoke again, reminding him that the plant had come and gone in a short time, that it had grown without his effort and passed without his control. And beyond that, there was the city before him, filled with many people, living and moving within it, each one known, each one present. The comparison remained clear, not pressed, not forced, but set before him in the same steady way as everything that had come before. The city stood, the land remained, and the sky above held its place. The sea, Far beyond was calm, its surface unchanged, the storm long gone. The path that had been walked had reached its end, from the calling to the sea to the deep, and back again to the land. What remained was the quiet, steady, and complete. Holding everything in place without movement, without interruption. And in that stillness, nothing needed to be added, nothing needed to be removed, and the story came to rest in the same calm in which it now remained.